Hey, good afternoon. My name is Derek and welcome to another edition of Shifting Perspectives. Today we're going to talk about something that doesn't make sense. And here's what I mean. It's this statement that says, oh, that doesn't make sense. Somebody does something and it just makes no sense to you. You look around the room and like you're looking from person to person, you're just trying to search the universe and try and figure out what in the world are they doing. That doesn't make any sense. Well, I'd like to submit to you that the sentence, the statement that says that doesn't make any sense is actually an incomplete sentence. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you how to fix it. To say that doesn't make any sense assumes that everybody knows and thinks and feels just like you do. That what doesn't make sense to you shouldn't make sense to anybody else. And that what makes sense to you is the only thing that should make sense to other people. So that doesn't make sense is an incomplete sentence. Grammatically, it's a complete sentence. I get that. But when it comes to people, when it comes to humans and relationships and working with other people and understanding the people around you, that doesn't make sense is an incomplete sentence. And here's what you need to do to fix it. That doesn't make sense to me. I was reminded of this the other day. My wife and I have very different personalities. She's much more proactive than I am. I'm more laid back, more lackadaisical. I tend to do things more at the last minute than she does. And we don't usually agree on what to do. Most of the time, if we disagree, it's on when to do something. She wants it done sooner than I do. She did something, and it truly didn't make any sense to me. And I said, that makes no sense. And I realized in that moment, I was assuming that the way I think, I feel, and see the world is exactly the way that I think that she should see the world. And that's a really, really arrogant way of viewing myself. I'll just put that out there. To say that doesn't make sense is very, very arrogant. And I have been there, I've said it, and I'm sure I'll say it again. It's an opportunity for growth because this is an area that I struggle in. I want everybody to think about the world the way that I think about the world. I think that's normal. But the growth opportunity for me, and for you if you're like me, is to say that doesn't make sense to me. And here's a fundamental principle in making that statement, is that people always do things that make sense to them. Think about somebody who's struggling to make ends meet financially, and they go out and they get a new car payment for $350 or $750. It doesn't matter. But they get a new car payment. Logically, financially, that doesn't make any sense. To me, that doesn't make any sense because that's not something I would do. But there are people who do that and they do it for a reason. It makes sense to them. There's some value that they're deriving from driving that car off that parking lot and having signed on the dotted line that says, I will pay $350, $500, whatever, $750 a month for this vehicle. Maybe they're trying to impress somebody. Maybe they're really impressed with the safety rating of the vehicle. It's a big vehicle. It's got a lot of airbags, lots of safety preventions, all that stuff. There's something about that vehicle that made sense to them to go do it. I think about somebody in an abusive relationship. A lot of the onlookers look at that relationship and say, it makes no sense why she's still in that relationship. It's an abusive relationship. But yet time and time and time again, people stay in abusive relationships too long. Why? Because to them, it makes sense to stay there. To them, there's some sense of belonging. Maybe there's some sense of security. Maybe there's some sense of comfort in knowing the predictability of that relationship, even though it's abusive. It makes sense for them to stay in that relationship. They're more scared of leaving than they are of staying. And so because of that, it makes sense for them to stay there. People always do things that make sense to them. Think about little kids. Think about a 5-year-old who wants to play soccer. Super excited about playing soccer. And then on the day of soccer practice says, you know what, I'm not playing this year at all. I'm not playing. I'm done. I don't want to practice. That makes no sense. We've been talking about soccer for weeks. And now you don't want to play soccer? That doesn't make any sense to me. But there's something in that 5-year-old that makes perfect sense why they don't want to play soccer. You've probably experienced this one before. A 3-year-old asks for a snack, an apple, an orange, a banana. You pick the snack. You prepare the snack for them, and then they throw a fit because they don't want that snack. Well, that makes no sense. You asked for the snack, I prepared the snack, I gave you the snack, and now you don't want it. That doesn't make any sense. But to that 3-year-old, it makes perfect sense. Something in them decided they didn't want it. They don't want that snack. Think about somebody who leaves a perfectly good career, what seems to be a perfectly good career to you and me, and goes and chooses to do something completely new, a midlife crisis. Whatever they decide in a midlife crisis, leave this job, go to this job. That doesn't make any sense to me, but there's some value that they derived from doing that. It made sense to them for some reason. So here's what I'd submit to you. That doesn't make sense is an incomplete sentence. And to say that doesn't make sense and just leave it right there is to assume that my experiences, my thoughts, my feelings should be everybody else's thoughts and feelings and experiences. That's not how it is. Everybody has their own thoughts and their own experiences and their own feelings. And I should value them for that. Now, things that make sense, when we talk about doing things that make sense, and people always do things that make sense, it's hardly ever logical, because fundamentally we're not logical people. We're emotional people. We're spiritual people. And sometimes we can use logic to direct our decisions. But at the end of the day, a lot of what we do isn't based on logic at all. So that doesn't make sense is not a statement of logic. It's usually a statement of emotion or a statement of being in connection with our spiritual being. When you find yourself stepping into the space and you want to say, that doesn't make any sense, and you just want to take the person and just shake them, this doesn't make any sense. Realize that is being extremely arrogant, because it's assuming that the world revolves around you. And you say, Derek, I know the world doesn't revolve around me. Well, are you sure? Because if you say that doesn't make any sense and you assume that it shouldn't make sense to them either, it's assuming that your experiences, your thoughts, your feelings should be everybody's thoughts and experiences and feelings, and they should all make the same decision as you. That is a statement that comes from an arrogant mindset where the world revolves around you. And I've been there. I've done that. And this is why I'm talking about it, because I've experienced the arrogancy in myself of making the statement and assuming that everybody should make decisions just like me. So you can either be arrogant and say everybody should experience exactly what I do and make the same decisions I do because what makes sense to me should make sense to everybody. Or you can step into the space where you get to grow through the opportunity. And you get to look at the person and say, there's a reason that they made that decision. There's a reason that they did something that makes sense to them that doesn't make sense to me. I wonder what that reason is. I wonder what that value is. I wonder what experience or feeling or emotion led them to make that decision. And in doing so and asking yourself that question, especially if it's somebody close to you, you're going to learn something about them that you never knew before. You're going to be able to form a deeper bond and a deeper relationship with them than you ever have had before, because you are seeking to understand what makes them tick. You're seeking to understand why would you do that? What makes sense? And not in a judgmental way of why would you do that, but in an inquisitive way. Why would you do that? What value are you getting from making this decision? And you might just learn that other people have experiences that are different than yours. You might learn that people have different emotions and different feelings than yours. And you might learn to tap into some emotions or some feelings that you haven't been able to tap into before, or that you haven't had the opportunity to tap into before. So as we close, I want to remind you that simply stating that doesn't make sense is an incomplete sentence. Replace it with that doesn't make sense to me. And then ask the question, why does it make sense to you? Help me understand the way that you think, because when you do that, your perspective will shift, because you've learned something you never knew before. And when your perspective shifts, your world changes and you can do things differently and better than you've done before.